Hi everyone, welcome to the Diocesan Audit Training. My name is Cathy, Hobart, and I am the controller for the diocese, and my fellow presenter today will be Deb Smith from St. Matthew's, Liverpool. You want to say hi, Deb?
Hello there.
All right, so let us begin. The diocesan audit policy was changed in 2023. The previous policy called for a 7-year cycle, and the policy has changed to a 3-year cycle. So every third year, or in the year that your clergy person leaves, must be an external audit. And the other 2 years can be done by internal committee audits. Previously, it was 6 years of internal audits, the 7th year or the year the clergy person leaves as an external audit. A CPA audit or review is suggested for the external audit requirement, but that is not a requirement that it be done by a CPA, and we'll get into that a little bit more. We are also no longer accepting the risk assessment report or agreed upon procedures report as an external audit. Those were previously done by Chip Clark of D'Arcangelo. And the audits are all due to the diocese by September 1st for the previous calendar year. So for example, this is 2024. The audit for December 31st, 2024 will be due to the diocesan office by September 1st, 2025. This is not a change. That's the existing policy. Another big change is we're no longer using the audit checklist from the Business Methods of Church Affairs, or BMCA. Subcommittee of the Diocesan Board created a new audit checklist to use for both internal and external audits. And this checklist was developed using the Diocese of West Virginia and the Manual of Business Methods in Church Affairs as guideposts. The program has been beta tested on 8 parishes in 2023 to work out the kinks. And this audit checklist is a combination of things. It serves as a financial audit. It gathers information that the diocese leadership might need down the road, and it builds in a chance for redundancy. As time goes by, as more parishes use this audit, if we need changes, we will make changes and revise the checklists as needed. So now we're going to get back into what qualifies as an external audit. As I said, it's suggested but not required to have a CPA audit or review, not a compilation, but an audit or review. You can utilize an audit team from another parish. You can use one trained individual from outside the diocese, outside the parish, working with 1 to 2 people from inside the parish. Or you can use one of the new diocesan audit team members. There are approximately 9 individuals who have undergone training and have volunteered to serve as auditors for parishes in the diocese. The recommended or suggested compensation for that is mileage reimbursement for their trip to and from your parish, and hospitality, coffee, lunch, dinner, depending on what time of day they're there. And now I am going to introduce Deb Smith as we're going to start in on the actual audit checklist.
The process page. Here's the list of information requested from the parishes. Some of this information will be received in advance. That advanced information is so you can begin reviewing and you can start gathering questions to take to the audit. It will save time at the actual audit. Safe Church self-audit is required if they have not completed one in the last year. The information can go to Google Drive folder. Cathy will assign one for the parishes. Your field work is to review all documents, ask questions of the church leadership, complete the rest of the checklist. If out of compliance, you should suggest that they come into compliance. We have suggested different times to comply with: 30 days, 60, 90 days, or ASAP. Some we ask them to complete the item immediately or by the next audit. It all depends on the importance of the item. Things like policies be done by next audit. Not having backup copies of their data, that is immediate. Checklist section. As you can see, the checklist is set up in sections. Just before a section is a list of required documents you should have to review for that section. If a section does not pertain to the parish, there's a box to check, and you can skip that section and move on. We will be going through these sections in today's training.
So now we're going to actually get into the checklist. And in the first section on this page, you see a literal checklist of documents. These are the documents you're going to need to have available to complete this next section of questions. At the very beginning of the checklist is a master list of every document that would be needed if you have it to complete the entire audit. And then we break it up into sections as you get into the program. So for this section, you will need a copy of the prior year audit report, vestry minutes from the year, copy of the approved budget for the year that you're auditing, copy of the December 31st financial statements, balance sheet, statement of financial position, income statement, statement of activities, or whatever your church's reports are. A copy of the parochial report for the year being audited, evidence of property and liability insurance coverage, any building appraisals or contents inventory prepared for the last 5 years, copies of the articles of incorporation and bylaws, if applicable, space use agreements and insurance certificates for regular users of the church property, and deeds for the properties. So the first thing you're going to do is read the audit letter from the prior year, and you're going to pay particular attention to the comments and recommendations that those auditors made. And then you answer the following questions. 1, was an audit completed for the previous year? That's a yes or no question. There are a combination of responses that you could have throughout this checklist. Some are yes, no, like this question, and some require a more specific answer. Number 2, were all problems corrected and follow-up done? If no, you'll see the little, again, this is a yes, no question. If you see underneath in the little parenthesis, if the answer on this line is no, include the open issues in this year's audit letter. You will find throughout this document little prompts like that, things we want you to flag and to report in your audit findings letter. And this is one, if you were to write no, you want to go back and be able to highlight that one so that you can put it in your letter. The next section is on vestry minutes. It's glancing through and reading the vestry minutes for the year. Number 1, again, yes, no question, was the budget approved by the vestry? And then if you look at 1A, what was the date of the meeting that the budget was approved at? That is a date, not a yes, no question. And then 1B, what was it a deficit budget? If so, how much was the deficit? And then you would enter the amount there or answer no. So continuing on in the vestry minutes, you're going to continue these next 3 questions also apply to the vestry minutes. Number 2, if there is a clergy person, is there a clergy housing allowance resolution for the next year in the minutes? That's a yes, no answer. Now, when it refers to clergy housing allowance here, this is not the amount of cash that you are paying your clergy instead of providing a rectory. That number is set aside in the letter of agreement. This is the amount that the clergy person requests the vestry pass the resolution to designate as excluded from their income on their W-2 for tax purposes. This one is referring to the tax purpose one, not the cash payment amount. Those two amounts could be the same, but they don't have to be. So you go through and answer the questions. To A, what was the date of the meeting that it was approved at? What amount was approved? Are the monthly financial statements included in the vestry minutes? Does the vestry meet monthly except for the summer? And you'll notice there are no little items tagged with a parenthesis here to note in your letters. Review the financial statements. You're going to look at the financial statements that they have provided you and answer the following questions. Cash or accrual method. Cash method of accounting is when you recognize things as they happen. So as you write a check, that is recorded. It's only activity that's actually occurring versus accrual method where you backdate things if it was the bill was dated December 25th, but you don't pay it till January. For accrual method, that would be an expense in December. For the cash method, that would be an expense in January. And then number 3, is there a general ledger? A general ledger is a document that you will have if you are using accounting software. And that is a listing of all of the debits and the credits in double entry accounting for the activity that has occurred. For every debit, there's a credit, and for every credit, there's a debit. It's okay if you don't have a general ledger, and you can mark NA on that line if that is the case.
Computer systems. If accounting software is not used for record keeping, check the box and skip to the next section. If they do not have record keeping software, include a recommendation to implement as soon as possible. You can also check the next box if there's no change since the last audit. Number 1, do they utilize cloud-based software? That is software not installed on the computer, is open through a web browser. Desktop software is software loaded on the desktop. Do they have current or duplicate copies of their records maintained off-site? If the answer is no, make an audit recommendation to fix as soon as possible. Number 2, limited authorized persons on the computer or computer program. If no, they should correct. 3, backup person. If the answer is no, make an audit recommendation to fix as soon as possible. Number 5, is there a plan for recovery of data in the event of a disaster? If no, make an audit recommendation to create a recovery plan within 30 days. 6, they need to have a plan for backup. If no, recommend it be done often and on regular basis.
Now we would like you to look at your parochial report and compare that against the year-end financial statement from the treasurer. And you're looking to see if the totals from the financial section of the parochial report closely match the year-end vestry report. They may not match exactly because there's some information not required by the parochial report that is on your financials, that may be on your financial statement. If the amounts are different, can you explain the differences? What's different about, from one to the other? The next section is reviewing the insurance information and space use information. You're going to indicate with a check mark all of the coverages that are in place, and if possible, attach a copy of the declaration page for each policy. We will keep copies of old declaration pages on file at the diocesan office in the event that the parish has not kept your old policies. So there's documentation and proof of insurance if needed in the future. If you can't attach copies of all the declaration pages, even providing just the name of the insurance company next to the properties would be helpful. That way, if God forbid we need something down the road or there's a disaster at the church, we can pull out diocesan records and say, this is the insurance coverage that was in place during that time. You want to go through and answer the questions. Are the policy premiums paid in full? If no, recommend correction as soon as possible. Has a review of the adequacy of the insurance coverage been done within the past 3 years? And if no, recommend a plan for a periodic review. Is there a periodic physical review of the property to ensure that adequate controls are in place to minimize loss? Is there a chance that somebody might trip or fall or be injured, or some other catastrophe like bare wires, those kinds of things? Is there a current space use agreement and insurance certificate on file for organizations regularly using the church? If no, recommend correction in 90 days. Is there a form for individual renters, like one-off? Is Safe Church training up to date for employees and volunteers? What is the date of the insurance carrier's most current site review? If you have church insurance, they had previously been coming out and doing a regular risk assessment. They had discontinued that program, but they have agreed to come out and review maybe 8 or 10 parishes a year to do that risk assessment. Your insurance company may not provide that. That's okay if they don't. If they do, consider taking advantage of it. What is the date of your most current New York State boiler inspection review? If you don't have a boiler, this question's not applicable. If you do have a boiler, are you in compliance with whatever your company's inspection process is? I've heard of a parish where it's every 2 years. So has it been inspected? The next question is on the Articles of Incorporation. If your church is not incorporated, you can check the box and skip to the next section. If this is year 2 using this audit checklist and you have no changes from the previous year's audit, you can check the box and skip to the next section. The first question, where are the Articles of Incorporation kept? If not kept in a secure, safe space, recommend correction as soon as possible. What is the date the church was incorporated? What is the legal name of the church on the Articles of Incorporation? And has a copy of the Articles of Incorporation been sent to the diocese? If no, recommend doing so. This is where redundancy comes into play. If you send an electronic copy to the diocese, we'll keep it on file. As there are changes in personnel at your church or people at your church, people come, new people and older people leave, clergy come, clergy go. If there's a copy on file at the diocese and paperwork gets lost at your church, or God forbid there's a theft, somebody comes in and steals your safe and your Articles of Incorporation happen to be unkept in your safe, there's always a copy at the diocese, so consider sending a copy to us. The next section is reviewing the bylaws. If your parish doesn't have bylaws, you can check the box and move on to the next section. If you do check the box, however, recommend correction by next audit. The chancellors are encouraging our parishes to have bylaws. If you don't check the box and you continue on because you do have bylaws, and there's been no changes to the bylaws since last year, you can check the box and move on if this is year 2 of using this audit program only. Where are the bylaws kept? Again, we're really interested that our documents are safe and secure. If they're not, recommend correction as soon as possible. When were the bylaws last modified? What was the date of that? And then number 3, how many vestry members do the bylaws call for? And 3A, how many vestry members does the parish currently have? If those two are not in alignment with, you want to recommend correction as soon as possible. So then we move on to your deeds. If, again, this is year 2 of using this checklist and you've already reviewed the deeds and there's been no changes, you can check the box and skip on. The interest here is what properties does the parish have? What properties does the parish own? And if you have deeds, who's listed as the owners of the property? And if you're unable to look at the deeds because you can't locate them and you have to hunt them down, you can check the second checkbox in that first section, indicate the deed was not looked at because the parish didn't have it or them, and then try to recommend correction by the next year's audit. And then again, we're really considering, are your documents safe and secure? If not kept in a safe and secure place, recommend correction as soon as possible. And then just that's where number 2, who is listed as the property owner on the deed? You might be surprised. It could be the church, it could be the diocese, or it could be somebody's sister-in-law or mother-in-law, which is anecdote that we heard at a recent training. Questions for the leadership?
If there's no change from previous audit, check this box and skip to the next section. The leadership should know about 501c3. It's a document that the church is exempt from IRS. Their ENT is the entity's 9-digit identification number. It is a business equivalent to the Social Security number. Their New York State sales tax exempt number is not the same as an ENT number. These documents should be kept in a safe place. Most of these questions are information gathering questions. A couple have recommendations. Question number 8. If there is no general ledger, describe the process. You may need to attach a separate sheet of paper if more space is needed. Number 12. Do they have a written travel and expense reimbursement policy? If no, they should have one by the next audit. Number 14. Are there human remains interned on the property? We would like to know this information. Number 15, do they have and maintain any emergency response plan? If no, recommend corrective action by next audit.
Church-sponsored school. When we say church-sponsored school, we're interested in something like a nursery school or a day school, something where your church is kind of entwined with the operation of that school more than just passing relationship. If this doesn't apply, you can check the box and move on. Otherwise, if this is year 2 and there's been no changes, you can check the box and skip on. And you want to go through and answer the questions. Does the school have a federal ID number? Is the school licensed and or accredited? If so, by whom? Is the school audited annually? What was the date of the most recent fire department inspection of the facility? Is there a screening process for teachers? For example, are there background checks done? And do the teachers have safe church training?
Next, look at the asset review. Here's a list of the items that should be available for this section. Most of the section is yes or no. Some do have recommendations. Number 1, all accounts reconciled monthly. If no, recommend corrective action in 30 days. 2B, bank statements that are not in the name or address of the church, recommend corrective action by next audit. Number 3, all accounts reconciled in the financial statements and reported to the vestry. If no, correct ASAP. Number 5, bank statements opened by someone other than persons that does the reconciliation. 5A, bank statements reviewed by someone other than the person who does the reconciliation. If both questions are no, correct in 30 days. Additional questions for discretionary fund. All questions here are yes or no. Review guild and other church-related organizations. You can skip this section if not applicable. These are yes and no questions except number 4. Any account you are unable to examine, including your audit findings. Restricted gifts and income. Only review the restricted gifts and income received in the year you are auditing. Number 1, is the bequest, memorial, endowment, and other restricted gifts documented properly? If no, recommendation to correct by next audit. Number 3 will require a dollar amount. Review investment account statements of security and financial statements. You can check the box if not applicable. Are all investments held in the name of the church? Are the investments accounts reflected in the financial statements? And number 3, Is income, dividend, interest, and fees reflected in the financial statements? If no to any of these, they need to be corrected in 60 days. Review petty cash financial statements and avoid check for petty cash replenishment. Check if not applicable. Number 1, count the fund and total up any receipts. Verify the balance. Is it same as on the financial statements? If no, make a recommendation to correct as soon as possible.
Now we're going to take a look at your property and equipment. If this is year 2 using this checklist and there's no change from the previous year's audit, you can check the box and skip on. Otherwise, you're going to go through and answer the questions. Is formal approval of the vestry required for all property and equipment additions and dispositions? Is there a dollar minimum that requires vestry approval? If so, has that been followed? If it has not been followed, make a note in the audit findings letter. Has a vestry established an amount that requires an addition to be capitalized? When we say capitalized here, what we mean is, are you reporting it as an asset on your balance sheet versus expensed, which flows through your profit and loss statement? If you don't have a balance sheet, if your treasurer provides you a list of bank accounts and you're not getting a list of fixed assets, equipment, property, buildings, then this question does not apply to you. If you do have a capitalization policy, if you do have a balance sheet, then you want to go through and answer the rest of the questions. Next section is still on property and equipment. Is there a detailed inventory of all property, furniture, fixtures, and equipment maintained? This could be a written list. This could be a video of the contents of your buildings or photographs. If no, recommend correction by next audit. You want something in hand so that if in the event of a loss, you have documentation to take to the insurance company to say this is what we have. You may not want to sit down and count how many forks and plates you have, and that's okay. You can do videos or photographs. Number 3A, are any of the items capitalized? Again, that goes to the previous question about a capitalization policy. If this doesn't apply, you can write NA. Otherwise, can you tell us what the capitalization policy is? For example, any purchase on something that costs over $2,000, we're going to capitalize that, recognize depreciation, and not record it as an expense. Is a periodic review conducted to compare the property, furniture, fixtures, and equipment with the recorded inventory listing? If you have a written list, are you updating it? If you have videos or pictures, do you redo them every so often to make sure that you're keeping track of things that have come new or things that you've disposed of? And number 5, have inspections been done on or by the following? Enter the dates of the last inspections of any of these that apply: fire extinguishers, kitchen fire suppression systems, town inspections, Department of Health. If you've had one, I know the Department of Health comes on their schedule and it's not usually scheduled out regular. So what was the date of your last inspection there? If the answer to any of A, B, or C is no, or greater than a year, recommend correction as soon as possible.
Cash receipts. Review procedures for control of plate collection and deposits. These are yes and no answers for most of the questions. A couple will need follow-up. Number 1, is a standardized form used in documenting collections? If no, recommend correction ASAP. Number 3, are there 2 unrelated persons responsible for the collection? Remember that some parishes are too small to have 2 unrelated people. Number 5, are checks being cashed from the collection plate? If yes, recommend correction within 30 days, if not sooner. Let's continue with these reviews. Number 8, are periodic statements provided to the pledge donors? They should be given at least annually. Number 9, the language on the pledge statement should be no goods or services were received, only an intangible religious benefit. Number 10, are all procedures, policies written down? If no, recommend correction. Using the cash receipts template provided. Review a sample of 10% up to 25 of the receipts reported for the year using the provided template. This can be a random selection, a couple from each month, a whole month's deposit, etc. Anything you want to use. Use the template provided to complete this task. Look for the deposit to show up on the bank statement and in the bank account and on the financial statements. Do they match? If they're off by a few cents, that's immaterial. Move on without noting. If they're all off a little, that is noteworthy. Are the deposits being made into the correct bank account? Make a list of any that are missing or the amounts differ and attach to the report. This is the template. If you will notice, the columns are the same questions from the previous page. Answer all questions for each of the items you enter. Disbursement documents needed. This is a list of documents for this section. Canceled checks might be tough. They may not have the physical canceled check, but they can be found on the bank statement. Checks sent by the bank may not be sequential. No check numbers, a list by date of expenditures will work. Hopefully you received the list of checks issued that year in advance and were able to let them know your selection for review. They should have pulled the paperwork. This is a time saver. Review procedure for disbursements. Some of these questions have recommendations. A, all expenditures made by check on or online. If no, recommend immediate corrective action. B, checks pre-numbered and used in sequence. If they're using online banking, this may not be applicable. D, is there clearly defined approved process for all disbursements? If no, document in an audit letter. Recommend correction action in 60 days. F, voided checks properly canceled and kept. They are marked void across the face so they can't be cashed. G, is signing blank check prohibited? If no, report in audit findings and recommend corrective action immediately. J, is more than one signature required for all checks? JI, if not all checks, are checks over a high amount required to have two signatures? If both are no, include in recommendations to correct in 90 days. L, checks written to cash prohibited. If no, recommend immediate corrective action. Additional questions for discretionary fund only. Are funds used for operating and personal expenses? If yes, list in audit findings and recommend immediate corrective action. Are there detailed records and receipts been kept? Yes, no, or some. Are checks written to vendors such as a utility rather than the individuals receiving assistance? Yes, no, or some. Using the disbursement template provided. Use the template provided to complete this task. Examine 10% of distributions made of 500 or more, or 1% of checks under 100. Limit 25 per sample. This could be partially filled out prior to fieldwork so that the church knows in advance what items you want to review. Choosing can be random from the month or two over the year. You are looking for payments authorized according to their stated process, documentation. That's receipts and invoices. Are they following their stated process for signatures and who the check is made out to? This is the template. The columns are the questions from the previous page. Fill out each column for each item you review.
The next section on the checklist is payroll. The top box are the documents you will need for this section: the personnel files, quarterly pay registers, payroll tax returns, statement of deposits, and financial statements. The first questions you're going to answer: examine the employee files, all of those documents. If you do not have payroll, you can check the box and skip on to the next section. If you're not paying anybody with a 1099 or a W-2, you can check the box and skip on. Otherwise, you move on to this section. If you're using the Diocesan payroll service or any other paid payroll company, you can check the box and skip to the next section. You will only be answering these questions if you're doing payroll in-house. You want to go through and answer the questions. Number one, are there adequate records to support the amounts reported on the payroll tax returns and W-2s? If no, recommend immediate corrective action. Were payroll taxes remitted timely? 3, do the sum of the wages reported on the 4 quarterly payroll tax returns equal the wages reported on the W-2s? 4, do the total wages equal what is reported in the general ledger, if you have one, or the wages reported paid for the year on the financial reports? Number 5, were the W-3 and 1096 forms submitted to the IRS? If they're mailed and not electronic filings, are they sent certified or return receipt requested? Number 6, were the W-2s and 1099s distributed to the recipients by January 31st? If no, recommend correction by the next audit. Number 7, is someone other than the person responsible for payroll reviewing and signing off on the payroll reports? Number 8, what frequency are they paying on? Monthly, semi-monthly, bi-weekly, weekly? If monthly, recommend corrective action within 60 days. Your frequency should be no less than semi-monthly, which would be the 15th and the end of the month. Bi-weekly is every other week. And if you are filling out the section because payroll is being done in-house, you want to make a recommendation in your audit findings letter to switch to a payroll service. We strongly encourage that. Clergy payroll. If you do not have a clergy person, a regular clergy person, you can check the box and skip on. If you have a regular clergy person or regular supply, you're going to answer some of these questions. Otherwise, 1, did clergy other than supply clergy receive a W-2 or 1099 for the year being audited? This is not a yes/no question. We want to know if they received a W-2 or a 1099. Number 2, were supply clergy who were paid $600 or more for the year issued a 1099? That's a yes or no question. Number 3, does the year-to-date amount paid from the payroll registers equal the sum of the cash compensation plus the SECA plus the cash housing allowance from the letter of agreement? They may not match your letter of agreement because there may have been COLAs or other increases applied during the year, so they may not reconcile to the LOA you have on file. This is yes, no, or LOA not available. Number 4, was the housing allowance for tax purposes reported in box 14 of the W-2 form equal to the amount approved in the vestry minutes? This is one we looked at back under the general section when we were reviewing vestry minutes. Was the same amount of housing allowance deducted from the wages reported on box 1 of the W-2? The housing allowance is an exclusion from their wages. So you would take their wages, minus out the approved housing allowance, and that net number is the number you're going to show in wages. Number 6, was imputed income for life insurance included in the wages on box 1 of the W-2? If your clergy person is enrolled in the pension fund provides life insurance, and the IRS says any life insurance that is in excess of $50,000, there's a value that's taxable income to the individual. If that applies, you will receive a letter from the diocesan office every December with the amount and how to report it on your W-2. If you are not receiving that letter, then you have nothing to report, and this question is not applicable to you. The next section applies to all employees, clergy or lay. If you don't have either, you can check the box and skip on. Otherwise, are you maintaining personnel files for all of your employees? And there are certain documents that they must contain. You want either their letter of agreement, letter of employment, or employment application, depending on whether they're clergy or lay. You want pay rates and effective dates. If there are changes, raises, increases, you want to document that and have that in your records. The Form W-4 for IRS federal withholding, the completed I-9 form from the Department of Justice for Immigration and Naturalization, the New York State withholding form, IT 2104, receipt or documentation that you have reported your employee to New York State via the new hire reporting system, documentation for any deductions you're making from somebody's pay, and written record of hours worked approved by a supervisor when applicable. Here, that kind of means timesheets or time cards if you're paying by the hour. Were employees issued W-2s, number 2, including clergy other than supply clergy. If you have a regular clergy person, they should be receiving a W-2 at year end, not a 1099. And that is why that question is there. Continuing on with additional questions, was the actual expense for travel reimbursement paid to the employee accompanied by supporting documentation? For example, a travel log, date of travel, miles traveled, purpose of travel. If you did not receive that documentation and you paid the mileage, that's taxable income and should be reported as part of their wages on the 1099 or W-2. Thinking supply clergy. If you have a supply clergy, you pay the mileage, but you're not receiving the documentation for that payment, then you need to include that on the 1099. Same goes for your clergy's W-2. If you are receiving that documentation, that's not taxable income and you do not need to include it. Independent contractors, were 1099s issued for those individuals who are not employees and for all unincorporated entities paid $600 or more for the year. Say you pay somebody to come in and mow your lawn, shovel your sidewalks, plow your parking lot, IT work. Those are the kinds of people, usually individuals, who you need to issue a 1099 to if you pay them $600 or more for the year. If they don't make over $600, you do not need to provide them the form. Pension benefits for lay employees. If you do not have lay employees at all, you can check the box and skip on. Otherwise, are those lay employees working 1,000 hours or more annually enrolled in one of the pension programs offered through the church pension group? There are 2 different plans that they could be enrolled in. If they are working over 1,000 hours a year and they are not enrolled in a pension fund product, then you need to recommend corrective action within 90 days. If you do have lay employees, but they don't work 1,000 hours or more a year, you can check the box and skip on to the next section. Otherwise, go through and answer the questions about the pension plans that your people are enrolled in. Number 1, define contribution plans. How much is the base percentage contribution by the church? B, what percentage of the employee's contribution is the church matching? C, are the contributions made for the year calculated on the compensation the employee received for the year? 2, for defined benefit plan, are the contributions for the year calculated at 9% of the compensation the employee received for the year? That is the big difference between the 2 plans. Defined contribution plan, the employee is able to add funds to it as well as the church adding funds to it. For defined benefit plans, only the church makes the pension payments. An individual cannot add to it. Number 3, are the contributions for the year, including any employee contributions made, paid in full? How frequently is the amount submitted to the pension fund? Now we get into pension for clergy employees. If you don't have clergy, you can check the box and skip on. Otherwise, are clergy employees enrolled in the church pension fund? Is the clergy compensation amount from the CPG invoices equal to the cash compensation actually paid through payroll? If no, recommend correction as soon as possible, because that means that the clergy person's pension is not being calculated correctly. And then 3, are the contributions to the pension fund for the year paid in full? Now we move on to health insurance. If you have no applicable employees, you can check the box and skip on. Otherwise, are clergy and lay employees scheduled to work more than 1,500 hours a year, receiving health insurance coverage through the denominational plan or have they at least been offered it? If they are not on the church health insurance, but have health insurance somewhere else, either through a spouse or another employer, you want to make sure you have a signed opt out waiver form on file in their employee file. And that brings us to journal entries.
Small parishes may not do journal entries. If applicable, check the box and skip the next section. All the questions are yes or no to simple section.
So now we come to the point where you've completed the entire checklist, you've answered all of the questions, and you're ready to finalize your audit package. You're going to create 2 letters that are going to accompany the checklist to go to the vestry and the board. The first one is going to be your audit committee report letter. There's a template involved or included in the checklist. And in the big blue box that you see, we noted the following exceptions, if any. Here is where you're going to report anything that materially changes the numbers on the financial statement that the treasurer provided to the vestry. Think cash accounts were not included on the list. Items like investment accounts weren't recorded on the report, or they were recorded at values other than what the investment statements say the value is. If there are loans or mortgages that aren't reported as to what the current balance is, any item that changes substantially the balances that the vestry is seeing should be noted here. And then your committee is going to sign the letter. The next letter that you're going to fill out are the audit committee findings and recommendation report. You fill out the top with the date to the rector, wardens, and vestry of, fill out the name of the church. If possible, please add the church name and city so that we can identify which parish is being audited. Fill in the year that you're auditing, and then you complete the next 2 sections. The first big blue box, areas where prior year audit recommendations have not been implemented. Back on the first page of the audit checklist, you looked at the prior year's audit. If there were recommendations made in last year audits that have not been addressed, this is where you would record those. The next section, anywhere you saw those little parentheses that said, please recommend correction or recommend doing something or fixing, this is where you're going to record all of those items in this box. And then all of your committee members would sign their names. So now, what constitutes the audit report? A complete audit package is going to include those 2 letters we just talked about, the audit committee report letter and the completed audit committee findings and recommendation letter. You're going to include a copy of the year-end financial statements that were prepared by the treasurer for the year that you're auditing, a copy of the completed checklist, and the templates and any other attachments that were necessary. And if not already submitted, you can attach a copy of the completed Safe Church self-audit. All of those documents together will constitute a full audit. You're going to prepare all of them, submit a copy to the vestry. The vestry is going to receive it, and then a copy should be sent of that entire thing, should be sent to the diocesan office, preferably within 60 days of completion, but if you get it to us by September 1st, that's what we're looking for. Now, the question becomes how to submit to the diocesan office, recognizing that it's a very lengthy document. Our first preference would be to have it electronically. We will provide you with access to a Google Drive folder and instructions on how to add it to it so that you can just copy your audit and add it to the folder. And then you would just send me an email at chobart@cnyepiscopal.org to let me know that your audit has been added to the folder. The other option is you can attach it on an email, and again, send it to me at chobart@cnyepiscopal.org. Or the other option is you can make a hard copy and mail it to the diocese, to my attention, at P.O. Box 3520, Syracuse, New York 13220. Once we receive your audit package, we will review it. There may be some items that we follow up with you proactively on, things that we think we can assist you with, or things that might be more serious red flags, or if we need more information. And if you answered the question on human remains that came up under the general review section, and you did indicate that there are human remains, you will receive a follow-up survey for additional information from the Diocesan Cemetery Committee. That brings us to the end of this audit training. If you have any questions or concerns, do not hesitate to contact me at the diocesan office. My contact information is on the staff page of the website at cnyepiscopal.org. Thank you and have a lovely day.